Hi, in this video, we'll discuss some very important things regarding the Opencv library. I'll be talking about topics like the history of Opencv, pip installation versus the source installation, Python's version of Opencv versus the C++ version, and how to ask and where to ask the questions regarding the Opencv library, and a lot of exciting and interesting things regarding the Opencv library. Now, my name is Tahan, and I've actually worked with the official Opencv.org team for the past few years. So I'm in a very good position to teach you a lot of things regarding Opencv library that you probably don't know. These will be things that separates a person who's just interested in Opencv library to create some projects versus a person who's a seasoned Opencv professional. So if you ever were serious about the Opencv library, then make sure to watch this full video till the end. And let's get started. Alright, let's first address the biggest question. Why Opencv? Why should you learn computer vision using Opencv library? Why not TensorFlow or some other library? So let me give you a bunch of reasons that you should be using Opencv. Alright, and the first one is Opencv is the biggest computer vision library out there, and such that it contains thousands of optimized computer vision algorithms. And I don't know about any other library that contains this, this vast amount of algorithms. So that's the number one reason. It's the biggest computer vision library out there. And it contains a comprehensive set of classical and state-of-the-art vision algorithms. Take a look at these categories. Like you have algorithms ranging from to detect faces, starting from detect face detection, and all the way to things like 3D point cloud generation, stereo images, and image stitching and classification, detection, segmentation, anything you name it. There is an algorithm for that in Opencv. And the estimated number of downloads of this library exceeds 18 million. And Opencv has a community of 47,000+ people. It's a really big community. And it's extensively used by people from companies all around the world, ranging from Google, Honda, Toyota, you name it. When someone is using a vision, there's probably some element of, Opencv being used there. So it's a really big library and it has a lot of vision algorithms. So these are the main reasons that you should be using the Opencv library if you're the slightest bit interested in computer vision. Now let's take a look at some history regarding the Opencv library. Now Opencv was started at Intel in 1999 by Gary Bradsky. This is the guy. And it was first released in 2000, but the major boom, the major interest in Opencv happened, you can point it down to 2005, because this is the year in which Opencv was used on Stanley, a vehicle that won the 2005 DARPA Grand Challenge. This is, I think, the biggest highlight of the Opencv library, because this is the challenge that, jump-started the self-driving car industry. And this was a really big feat, and Opencv was used on that self-driving car vehicle. It was a really big thing. And later on, the development of Opencv library continued with Gary Bradsky and Vadim, which I can't pronounce this guy's full name. So these two guys were, leading the project. And at this point in time, Opencv now supports a multitude of algorithms, like I just previously showed you. And it is expanding, every single day. We are having more machine learning and vision algorithms, integrated and contributed by the vast developer community that the Opencv has. And so the Opencv library is primarily, coded in C++ language, but it has wrappers or bindings for other languages like Python or Java. So if you want to, integrate Opencv in mobile, you'll be using the Java's binding for the Opencv library. And if you're, working in data science or some other projects, and the most, the biggest community is the Python community, which, if you want to create an AI project of using computer vision, you're probably going to be using Python's binding of Opencv library. And Opencv is supported on multitude of, platforms, Windows, Linux, OS X, iOS, and Android, you name it. And the interesting thing is it also has interfaces for, CUDA and OpenCV. So you can use NVIDIA powered GPUs to speed up some algorithms, and even OpenCL based GPUs, so to power and optimize the algorithms. And so the best part about the OpenCV library is that it contains the best of C++ and Python. So the whole code and that code base is in C++, right? But with Python's binding, what you get is that the high level interface of Python and the optimized C++ algorithms running in the background. So when you call Python functions, internally the C++ code is being executed. So you get the speed of C++ and the high level, friendly interface of Python. So that's the best of both worlds. So that is one of the main interesting things regarding the OpenCV library. So one of the most common questions when you're just starting out with the OpenCV library is, should you start with the Python version or should you start with the C++ version? So for most people, I think the answer to this question is use the Python version. It's really easy, it's simpler, and you get the most out of OpenCV. Not everything, but a lot of things. But okay, so there's that. Let me now jump into some comparisons and pros and cons of both versions. All right, for that, I'm gonna show you the repos of both the OpenCV Python version. So this is the OpenCV Python version. It has got 2,000 stars and a couple of hundred forks. And if I look into the official OpenCV C++ repo, it has got like 54,000 stars and 45,000 forks, because this is the main repo that people are pushing code to in order to add functionality to the OpenCV. And if new changes come up, then it would be synced from this repo. There are also some details regarding why the Python's version is not the official version as of just a few months ago, and I'll get into that in a bit. But right now, I'm going to focus on the pros and cons of the C++ and the Python version. So with C++, you get everything in OpenCV. You get all the available functions and every single, code that gets pushed into the official repo, you get access to that, right? So that is the main advantages of C++ version. Alternatively, if you're using OpenCV Python version of OpenCV, then you don't get access to all the algorithms, because what happens is that someone pushes code in C++ version, it gets approved and it's included in the official repo. Then later on, people come up and create Python bindings for that library, and the whole process it's not really fast. I mean, if someone introduces a new C++ package or module inside the OpenCV library, it's not going to be immediately converted to its Python version. It's going to take time, and someone is going to do it. So with the Python version, you don't get access to every single module in OpenCV. There are a couple of modules that you'll miss out on, but you don't need to worry about that most of the time, because all the important algorithms, and in fact, the Python version itself contains thousands of algorithms. So most of the time, you won't need to worry about some algorithm that's in the C++ version and not in the Python version. I think once there was an issue so I personally use the Python version of OpenCV, and I only faced that issue of a function that was in C++ version but was not available in Python version twice or thrice, and that's it. But for most of my use cases, I'm completely fine with the Python version. So that was the biggest on in the Python version and the pro for the C++ version. Now let's take a look at the biggest disadvantage when you're using C++. So another thing is that when you're using C++, you have to write a lot of code, and it's really cryptic. It's not it doesn't have a high level friendly interface like Python. So if you're using Python, you can get something done in a couple of lines of code, and but the same thing in C++ is going to take a lot of more lines of code. So for example, I can show you this example here of Learn OpenCV library. So take a look at something like this. So this is a blog post in Learn OpenCV. So Learn OpenCV is a popular blog site for OpenCV and computer vision tasks, and a lot of blog posts here have code for both Python and C++. So you can compare how something works in OpenCV C++ versus Python. So take a look at this. In C++, you would be doing something like this. In Python, you would be doing something like this. So for example, take a look at this. You can get something done in 2 to 3 lines, but with the same with Python, it's going to add a couple of more lines. And this is, although this is somewhat similar in density, but it quickly gets a lot complicated when you're using some other modules like doing face detection, things like that. You can quickly see the comparison that with Python, you can get the job done in just a few lines of neat code. But with C++, it's a lot messier, it's cryptic. So there's that. So if you're already a seasoned professional in C++, then you're fine with using C++ version. In fact, I would recommend that you probably use the C++ version. But there's another disadvantage from using C++. The online community and the tutorials that you see are mostly going to be Python focused regarding the OpenCV library. And so there will be the support factor. So when you're looking tutorials online, either in video form or blog posts, most of the people will be using Python's version of OpenCV to create applications. So there is a huge community, and that community is AI focused. So they're creating AI applications using OpenCV. That's why they're going to be using the Python's version. So now let's take a look at another factor that you should be focusing on when you're talking about the C++ versus the Python version. So you already know the C++ language is really fast, but with the Python. But since you're using OpenCV, Python's binding, the code internally is running C++, so the speed is pretty comparable. But still, if you're if you messed up, if you don't write very optimized Python code, then there's going to be some minute speed differences. Most of the times these speed differences would be negligible. But if you really want that milliseconds of speed and you know how to write very optimized code in C++, then you might prefer using C++ if those milliseconds matter to you. Right, so there's the speed advantage with the C++ library. Again, most of the time the difference is negligible. So these are all the differences that you need to consider when deciding if you want to use the C++ version or the Python version. My recommendation for most people is go ahead with the Python version. Maybe later on, if you find you can get some more performance boost out of the C++ version, you can later on shift to that. And most of the concepts that you learn in Python will generalize to C++. Another common question that I get is that should I install OpenCV using a package manager like pip install or conda install, or should I install OpenCV from source? So this is a big question. And I've actually written a blog regarding how to install OpenCV from source and discussed some of the advantages and disadvantages of both techniques. So let me just show you the whole blog post. So this is the blog post that I have written. It shows you how to install OpenCV in Windows 10 from source with the NVIDIA's GPU support. So that's a post I've written, and this is a section which you can take a look at. All right. So take a look at some of the advantages when you're using a package manager. So a package manager is like a pip where all the interface where all the modules are stored. So whenever someone does pip install OpenCV, pip install anything, it goes to that package manager and gets that a module and installs it in your PC. So these are the package manager. Then another package manager is conda, right? So you can either do conda install, pip install. It's pretty much the same thing, but obviously the versions of OpenCV stored would be different. I would strongly recommend that you use pip install when you want to install OpenCV, not conda. So I don't know who's managing the conda's version of OpenCV, and go for the pip install. Don't use the conda install. All right. So let's take a look at some advantages of using a package manager like the pip. So the installation is really easy. That's the major advantage. You just do type in a single line of a code, pip install OpenCV Python or pip install OpenCV contrib Python, and that's it. OpenCV is installed in your PC. So, and you don't need any knowledge, nothing is required. Just type that line in your command prompt, and that's it. OpenCV is installed. And another advantage is that you can also easily update. Whenever a new version comes up, you all need to do pip install update the library's name, and the library is updated. So that's it. A single line of code to install and then a single line of code to update the library. That's the major advantage that you get with pip. All right, now let's take a look at some disadvantages of installing with a package manager. So one of the major disadvantages is that you install the library with its default preset features. So this is not something to worry about in case you're not a, you don't want to nitpick modules that comes with Opencv library. And this is something that that people can do who already have some expertise, a lot of expertise with the Opencv library, and it's for some really specific use cases. For most of the time, for most of the people, it's nothing to worry about. And a similar problem, another disadvantage is that you can't do any optimization when you're doing installation. So when you're doing installation with source, you get to choose some optimization flags, which in turn optimizes some algorithms or a series of algorithms. So you can't do that when you're doing installation with pip. Again, this is something that some people who are already experts expert in Opencv and optimization techniques can do that, because it requires some prerequisite knowledge on how to optimize flags, which flags to enable, which flags not to enable, and things like that. And it's something that you shouldn't worry about, because already the preset default library package that you're going to get with the pip, it's already optimized for general use cases. So it's most of the time it's going to work for you. Now let's talk about source installation. So the major advantage of source installation are the two things that you can't do in pip. So you can, with source installation, you can optimize flags. So you can get performance boost in some set of algorithms or techniques in the library. Again, you can only do that if you have prior knowledge. And the next thing that you can do is get rid of some modules that you're not going to use in Opencv. For example, if you're using Opencv just for doing background subtraction or some technique, then you don't need all the other modules that comes with Opencv. And this is something that you don't need to worry about. But in case you're using Opencv and on a very constrained edge device, something like a mini Raspberry Pi or something like that, that has a very limited memory constraints, some very limited memory constraint, then in those cases you don't want to install the whole package, right? You just want to install some specific modules in Opencv. So that controlled installation can be done when you're installing it from source. So in those specific circumstances, you need to do source installation. All right. So now let's talk about some disadvantages of source installation. The installation whole process is really tedious. Something can easily go wrong. It involves a number of steps. So for example, this whole blog post tells you how to install from source, and it's a number of steps that you need to perform correctly in order to achieve source installation. By the way, if you're interested in source installation, you can follow along with this blog post. It's a really high quality blog post that can easily tell you what steps to perform in order to do the complete source installation. But I wouldn't recommend for someone who's just starting out with Opencv. Another disadvantage with the source installation is that you need to have some prior knowledge. I do cover some things which flags to enable and not to enable in this blog post. So if you're following along with this, then that point is covered here. And the other major disadvantage and the final disadvantage with source installation is that even when you need to update, it's not a single line, it's not a single command. You need to install the update package from the original repo, download it, and then configure it and do the update, build the library and update it. So it takes some time, and it's somewhat a tedious process compared to a single line command that you can do with pip. This was my review on source installation versus the pip installation of Opencv library. And by the way, this whole comparison generalizes to other libraries too, not just Opencv. So these advantages and disadvantages are, also generalizes to other libraries which have a source version and the pip version. By the way, if you were to use C++ version of Opencv, then you need to do the source installation. Another thing that I should mention was that take a look at this repo of the original. Take a look at this original repo, which has 54,000 stars and 45,000 forks, and it's Python Opencv version, which has just 2,000 stars and some forks here. This tells you that the Python's version is not maintained, it's maintained by someone else. And that was true. It was not the official version of Opencv. It was maintained by these contributors, and the primary contributor was this guy. And this guy alone, handled all the updates regarding the Python Opencv's version. And it was maintained the library as a side project. It was a hobby side project. It was not even his real job. And so hats off to this guy. So for a number of years, this guy just maintained the OpenCV's Python version. But just a few months back, Opencv made the Python's repo official. So now you will see more frequent updates. So this was a major disadvantage when you doing pip install, that the whole package was being handled by some other person, not the official Opencv guys. So now after the few months back, these guys, like Opencv guys joined hand with this guy, and they made the package Python version official. And so yeah. Now let's talk about the Opencv.org official website. Here you will find a number of useful resources, to help you out with the Opencv stuff. So there are a number of pages here, but the most useful pages are this GitHub page, which leads you to the official Opencv repo. So take a look at here. And so this is the official repo, and then this wiki, which I'll cover in a moment. And then this online, these tutorials, Opencv tutorials. So these are the three most important things. If you're interested in paid courses, then the other thing that you should be concerned about, this courses page. All right. One other thing that I should tell you is that Opencv started out as a non-profit organization, but then it expanded into other things. Like recently, they introduced this Opencv AI kit. It's a depth camera. It's a really interesting depth camera that you can buy. And then they have, they also joined forces with RoboFlow, which is an interesting SaaS tool. And then they also introduced their annotation tool. They also started offering AI consulting services. So they expanded a lot. And Gary Bradsky, still the president, but right now the CEO of Opencv is Satya Malik, from which also has his own website called Learn Opencv, which I just previously showed you. This was the website. This is Satya. So Gary Bradsky made him the CEO. He's still the president, but now Satya is looking over all the operations. So these are some of the details regarding the Opencv library. It's not just a library right now. It's expanded to a lot of other things. So that is a high-level overview of the Opencv site and the whole organization. Now let's take a look at how to navigate Opencv docs and tutorials. So for that, you need to go over this page. So once you open this page, you'll see something like this. So this is these are all the tutorials for the C++ version of Opencv. And for example, if you want interested in image processing, you'll click here, and then you'll see all the relevant tutorials categorized for image processing here. And then you can click on any of these things, and you'll see something like this, how to use histogram and things like that. One of the best things about this doc is that all the code is in C++ version. Yeah. Then you can also convert this code into Java by just clicking this button, and then into Python by clicking this button. And one of the things that you need to make sure is that you're looking at the docs for the right Opencv version. For example, drop down here, and if you open this, you'll see something like this. So for all the Opencv versions, the docs would be maybe slightly different due to some code updates, module updates, or things like that. So whatever version of pip that you installed, so you can select that version here. For example, if I do pip install right now, I'll be installing this version, 4.5.2.52. This is the latest version of pip that I will install. So what I would do is make sure that I'm using that version. This is the development version. It's not the, it may have issues, but you can use the most latest stable version. All right. So once you do that, the page would automatically refresh, and if there are any changes, you would see them. So this is how you can navigate the whole docs. These are all categorized in a really neat manner. So anything that you need to check out, you can just click on it. And one of the things that I should mention is that not all things are available for each of the wrappers. For example, there are some things here that you will find that have C++ modules, but they don't have the Python code for that. So yeah, these are covered here, but there are some things that once you start going through the docs, you will find only code here for some modules are in C++, not in Java or Python. So after the Python tutorials, you also have Opencv.js tutorials, JavaScript bindings for the Opencv library. Then you have some frequently asked questions, then tutorials for the contrib module. So what is the contrib module? Contrib module is an extra module that when you do pip install OpenCV contrib Python, you get a bunch of extra modules that has been, that are contributions of other developers. It's not part of the main OpenCV package, but it comes, it has a lot of interesting algorithms that has been contributed to the OpenCV library by some other developers. So take a look at here. These are all the main modules of OpenCV. Inside each module, you get algorithms. For example, take a look at this video analysis. So this module will contain several algorithms relating to video analytics. And for each of these modules, there are a number of algorithms attached to each module that you can use for that task. So for example, this DNN module will take care of all the deep learning based tasks that you need to do with OpenCV. So these are all main modules. But when you do OpenCV contrib and so on, you also get a bunch of extra modules. As you can see, these are a lot of extra modules that can do a variety of other tasks with the OpenCV library. And for the tutorials that you see are for the main modules, not the contrib. For tutorials in contrib module, you can look at here. Tutorials for contrib module, if you click here, then you will find a bunch of other tutorials that will teach you how to work with some module in the contrib package. So for example, DNN SuperRes tutorial will teach you how to use super resolution with OpenCV library. Since this is a contribution by some external developer, so they have put out tutorials for that separately. So in summary, this is what the whole OpenCV looks like. So these are main tutorials, then we have contrib tutorials, then there are FAQs, then there are separate Python JavaScript tutorials. We have all the main modules here. These are all links. So if you click here, you will see the classes, all the algorithms that can be used in this module that are present, and then the details regarding each of these things. It's a little cryptic. To be honest, it's a lot cryptic, but that's the reason that you need to look at other tutorials, other resources, books and courses to get OpenCV. OpenCV, in short, is a non-profit. OpenCV library is a non-profit organization with a with a free library that everyone can use. But to get the most out of the library, you need to get something out of your pocket, to be honest, because nobody is gonna the official developers are not gonna make effort or spend a lot of money by making these docs less cryptic or make high quality tutorials. But and the reason I'm saying this, because a lot of tutorials in these docs here are not exactly high end quality. You need to shuffle around a lot, and you need to change a lot of things in order to get things working the way you want. And to be honest, developers also have official courses. OpenCV has official courses, and some of the developers have their own books in paid sites. And it's a little bit of gray area, because since they already offered a free library, OpenCV, I guess it's okay if they offer you some paid courses or books in order for you to fully use the OpenCV library. One final tip that I will give you regarding this documentation is that whenever you want to find out what a particular function in OpenCV does, or you want to know more details about it, what you can do is come to this doc and then use this search bar and type in the function's name. For example, cv2.imread reads the image. I want to know more about it. What I can do is type the function's name without using the cv2 initially, and I type in imread, and then I will see these instructions, and then I will click on any of these links, particularly the top one. And then what it will do, it will take me to imread's doc inside this documentation. And I can see here, this is the C++ syntax for using the imread function. This is the Python syntax for using the imread function. And then here are all the relevant information regarding what types of files are acceptable and whatnot. And these are some nodes, and then these are variables, what imread accepts and what those variables means, and then some other useful links. So you can do this for any of OpenCV function which you want to find more about. Right. So this is how you navigate the OpenCV docs properly. Now let's take a look at OpenCV's wiki. So for that, you can come on to the main site, opencv.org, and then click here. Now you will find this page. It contains a bunch of important links. This is the official site, FAQ, Q&A forums, then the relevant documentation links, And then this link is really important. The changelog. This tells you what the new version of OpenCV comes with. So what are the major changes in the new versions? What are the new things in the new versions? So this is a really important page, which highlights and summarizes all the important things. And then there are repositories for the OpenCV, the contrib repository, the issue trackers if you have issues, and then the other important links. And then on the sidebar, there are also web pages for some important things. For example, for deep learning in OpenCV, there are a bunch of pages that would help you out regarding which model you want to use, what sorts of models are available, and what pre-processing steps to perform for each separate technique and stuff like that. So this is another important doc for working with OpenCV library. Now let me introduce you to some interesting websites to learn more about OpenCV and computer vision. The first off is Bleed AI, which is my site. I also have a YouTube channel, and recently I've been more active in making video-based tutorials. But the site itself contains a lot of other resources, interesting blog posts and stuff like that. Then we have Learn OpenCV by Satya Malik and their team. I have also published a number of tutorials in Learn OpenCV. One of the best things about Learn OpenCV is that you will find blog posts that will contain C++ and the Python version of some tutorials, which you might find interesting if you want to know the code for both of them. Then lastly, we have Bioresearch, which is one of the most popular computer vision sites out there. One important drawback in Bioresearch is that you can't ask questions in blog posts because the forums are disabled. And then just recently, after Adrian launched Bioresearch University, I don't think you can download the code for that. Just because I was checking it out, it was not allowing me to download unless I enroll in the Bioresearch University, which is a paid program. So if you got the money, then Bioresearch is more right for you. But still, there are a lot of interesting things that you can learn here, right? And Bioresearch University itself and other books, courses itself are really good. And so, yeah, last of all, let me highlight some interesting forums that you can use when you're stuck in OpenCV. So one of the best resources out there is Stack Overflow, which most of the programmers are already familiar with. But OpenCV specific forums, some of them are these. So forum.opencv.org is an OpenCV specific forum that you can ask OpenCV related questions to. So now there are developers here that can answer your question, but the key to getting answers is to ask the questions in the right way, just like you do it in Stack Overflow. So this is one forum that you can use. Other than that, if you find issues in the library itself, there are bugs in it, then you can use this OpenCV's official repo and the issues page, and you can create an issue for that. Or you can find existing threads which are already resolved, and maybe you find your answer already there. Make sure to open an issue only if there is a problem in the library, not when you're stuck in a problem of your own application or some project. For that, you can use the forums. Right, so these are two main resources in case you're stuck in OpenCV. So that is all for this video. I hope that you learned a lot of new things regarding the OpenCV library that you probably didn't know before. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel and share it with your colleagues. And see you in the next video. Bye.